Welcome aboard the Athletics Can't Wait Jets podcast, your nonstop shop for all things Jets with Tim McMaster, Zack Rosenblatt, and Marissa Dunn.
Can't wait.
We are getting ready for another Jets primetime game. It's crazy how often this team is getting featured by the NFL. Obviously, that's all because of Aaron Rodgers. Unfortunately, it's bad news for Zach Wilson because all eyes will be on him again Sunday night as the Jets take on the Raiders on the Strip in Vegas. We're going to get you ready. Zach has not left he didn't leave early to get some gambling in before the game. He is still in New Jersey, but he'll be heading to Las Vegas for the game. I'm Tim McMaster along with Zack Rosenblatt. Thanks for checking out the Can't Wait podcast. Happy to have you here, either streaming live on YouTube right now, get your voice heard in the comments section, or if you're checking out the audio version, give us great reviews wherever you are listening. You looking forward to Vegas, Zach? Yeah. I'll say this about Vegas. If you had asked me like when I was 15 years old, how many times in your life do you think you'll end up going to Las Vegas? I probably would have said like once, twice. But like, because of when you work in sports, especially now that they have teams, but like, I feel like I've been there like 4 years in a row because like the NBA summer league's there and we go there, as the Athletic, and the baseball winter meetings were there 3 years ago. I was there for that. Like, it's like, I've been there much more for work than for pleasure.
Oh, me too. I used to cover Arizona basketball and they're playing Duke tonight, by the way. I have the Arizona hat on. I used to cover the Pac-12 tournament in Vegas every year. And then combine that with going when I was 21, going a couple other times. I lived in Arizona, so it's a lot easier to get there. So I've probably been there 10 times. This is the first time in like 5 years. As Taylor Delgado, fellow Arizona alum said, Vegas is a weird town, man. It really, like, especially the first time you go there, it's like very, like, the lights are cool and it's very overwhelming. But like when you're walking through the streets of Vegas, it's so weird. There's all those guys who are just like flicking those little naked girls to you cards and just like walking around flicking them. I always wonder if anybody ever actually takes them from those guys. I'm sure people do. It's where
they wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And just like all the like drivers waiting to take you to like a strip club and stuff. Like there's like the seedy underbelly of Vegas that's just like right beneath the surface. Like, not to go too darker in the weeds, but
we're getting dark here.
The Pac-12 tournament used to be at the MGM Grand, so I stayed there a few times. And the games would obviously go late because it's the West Coast, Pac-12 after dark stuff. And so, like, I think one time I was out with some other Pac-12 reporters. We get back to MGM at nothing closes in Vegas, so we're there at probably 3 or 4 a.m. And just in the lobby, you just see ladies who have nighttime profession, I would say, just strolling through the casino. And one of the reporters like waved to somebody that he knew, like down that way, and in between them was one of those ladies, and she thought he was waving to her. And it was like, as you mentioned, when you're a kid, you think you go to Vegas sometime. Like, you never expect to be in a situation where you're talking to somebody like that. At least I've never. So it was. That just like summed up Vegas, maybe. But Vegas is fun. It's way overpriced, very expensive.
We live in New York, though, so it's not.
We live in New York, but it's more expensive. It's more expensive than New York, though. Like
it is.
Like getting a
because
drink,
everyone's on vacation and you don't mind spending.
Unless you're gambling, when you get free drinks, like buying an alcoholic beverage is like very expensive. So like when you're younger, what you do is you buy the booze at like CVS there, and then you put it in your hotel room and you drink in there, and then you go to whatever you're gonna do. I will say one thing that is fun, and I've only done it once or twice. You go to like the old Vegas, like and everything's cheaper there. Anyway, this is a nice long sidetrack about Vegas where we started talking about some fun things. But when things are depressing Jets wise, that's what you're on mute, by the way, Tim.
Every time most of my trips there, you end up staying at one of the casinos, right? Especially if it's for work, because the work thing is at the casino or whatever. But when we were there for Summer League this year, we stayed at the Vdara, which is like next to the Aria. It's like the Aria's sister hotel, but it's not a casino. It was fantastic. It's just like a regular hotel. You walk in and it's a lobby. There's like a little cafe with food. Nice. There's a coffee shop and there's an elevator. That's it. There's no like noise and like pumped in oxygen and ding, 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 ding.
I even
it was great.
I even think about when I first went. It was like the first times I went, or actually probably every time I went, because sports betting online has been more the last 5 years. There was like sports betting was only like at the sports book in Vegas. I remember how like cool I felt like placing a bet a game. Now I'm like doing like 10-part parlays in NBA games, but yeah, like game, like the first time you play blackjack, if you're not experienced, it's like very intimidating because if you do the wrong thing, everybody at the table flips out at you. Now I love blackjack. Don't know how to play craps. I still have not learned that. Roulette is a fun game. You don't have great odds, but it's a great feeling when you win. But anyway, there's our little Vegas sidetrack for you guys.
Yeah, let's get into the Jets. The difference with blackjack is when you're the guy that gets mad. That's when you know you.
Yeah, that's how you know you're like. And it feels a better feeling because then you're like, oh, I kind of know what's going on now. It's great. Yeah.
Yep. All right, let's move into the Jets. We're gonna talk about some comments from the week. We're gonna make some predictions for the second half. Zach has an article up about predictions for the second half of the season. We're not going to go into all of them. If you want all of them, check his story out on The Athletic, but we'll get into some of them. We'll predict this game. We'll do our picks as well. But let's start with kind of news and notes and what they're saying. I guess we'll start with the biggest one, Zach, as far as like what got taken up on Twitter. You posted this on Twitter. People were not happy about it. Offensive line coach Keith Carter said yesterday, the Jets wanted to put Billy Turner at right tackle last week and Max Mitchell at right guard because Turner had some past experience blocking Khalil Mack. That didn't go well. It didn't go well for Turner, and it didn't go well.
Yeah, yes. Twitter. It went worse for Turner than Carter, I would say. Yeah, I get his point, and what wasn't said there and probably should be stated is that like they didn't have many other options. It was either you have Max Mitchell out there playing against him, or you have Billy Turner. Because if you have Max Mitchell out there, then you're probably playing like Xavier Newman at guard. And for as like fun as that story was a couple weeks ago, I don't think he played like amazing. And that was the Chargers had some talented pass rushers, and it didn't work. Obviously, Billy Turner is not very good, and he hurt his hand, and he's not going to play anymore this week at least. It seems like it might be a long-term injury, but he will not play this week. I don't really have a good feel for who's going to play right tackle. If I had to guess, I would say Max goes to right tackle, and maybe they put Xavier Newman at guard. Another option is Dennis Kelly at tackle. He's a veteran. But they kept him a healthy scratch last week, and Carter Warren was active, and he's a rookie who's never played before. So there's no great solutions, and it's scary with Max Crosby coming to town. But yeah, I guess you kind of understand their logic to a degree, but I don't know that any fan wants to see Billy Turner out there anymore. I don't think.
Well, it's like, okay, he's played against Mac, but like that doesn't mean he can. If anything, maybe that makes Mac more excited, right? Like,
I know
I've already beaten this guy when he was in.
and we saw what happened. I mean, and that, I was just talking about I was just interviewed for a different for like a radio show earlier, and they were asking about like what they do to Max. We'll get into that later, but like it seems like Hackett hasn't like given these tackles a lot of help a lot of the times, which I never really understood. And I don't think Billy Turner got enough help last week. I don't know if that mattered anyway, but yeah, that was the biggest issue on the O-line last week. I do think the sacks and like pressures, like it's a complicated stat because I think sometimes it's only put on the O-line when it can be the quarterback's fault or vice versa. So it's complex. I think last week a lot of it was Zach, but Billy Turner, a lot of the problems on the O-line stemmed from Billy Turner at right tackle. So you hope Max Mitchell, if he's right tackle, can do a little better this week, but it's not an easy task in front of them.
This is a good question through the chat from Giordano. If you had to make a pie chart on what needs to be fixed for the offense, what's the percentage of Zach, play calling, and offensive line? Yeah,
man, that's really good. I think play calling is honestly pretty high up there. I'd say needs to fix. Like Zach just needs to like be better than he was. So I don't know, like 40% Zach, 40% play calling, 20% O-line.
Okay, all right. So you're giving the O-line a
little more leeway because they're in a really tough spot. Think about like all the injuries they've had. Like it's bad luck, and the guys they're playing, they did invest in, but like they've had really, really bad luck on the O-line. So I will say one thing that I didn't tweet out about what Carter said, which kind of made me laugh when he said it. Like he was being asked about like, how he's had to do this shuffle on the O line and how crazy it's been, and somebody asked like, the two guys that have like been there every week are Laken Tomlinson and Mekhi Becton, and he's like, and he's like, so he's asked like, how do you handle it as Dwayne Brown comes back? He's like, oh, it's a great question. I sometimes I just wish one of these two guys would say they don't want to move so we can have something like locked in, and so we don't have to like change everything up. And in my head, I'm like, Mekhi Becton has said that. So yeah. I don't think he realized I get what he was trying to say. Like, they've been so stable that like, I wish they would just say, we're not going to move. So I don't have to like deal with doing that or something like that. Like, but it was just funny because Mekhi Becton, if anybody is willing to say they don't want to move, it's him. He had Mekhi last week when he spoke to us did have like good quotes about like, I just want to play. It's pretty clear he does not want to play right tackle. That, yeah. Like he was explaining like all the challenges of moving over there, but Dwayne Brown's never played right tackle. Like if Dwayne Brown's starting again, he's not going to be at right tackle, is my opinion. So,
so another quote. Aaron Rodgers was on McAfee this week. Had some honest thoughts about the offense. Basically, he said, "We're just not doing our part." Interesting that he says we're just not doing our part. Like I actually find that nice to hear. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, he's including himself.
He's taking part of the blame, even though he's obviously not. But it shows you that he's still, and we know it because he's there for every game. But like he's still locked in and part of this because he's saying we when he's obviously not part of the official on the field problem right now. He's a big part of the problem in being hurt, but not part of the problem actually being on the field. But we can always count on Aaron, to be honest, every Tuesday on McAfee.
Although as I expected it would happen, I think we talked about this, his whole Derwin James exchange, he acted surprised that the cameras were there or whatever. And I'm like, you knew that they were there, buddy. Come on.
It wasn't even a crowd. It was just
the post-game handshake always has like mics and cameras over there. That's like the NFL Films thing. But yeah, I'm this kind of, I don't know if you were going to bring up any like Hackett quotes, but like he also talked yesterday.
No, I didn't have any Hackett quotes. So
go for it. He talked yesterday. He kind of has been, we grilled him pretty good, I think. And he's saying a lot of the same stuff that Jets fans have been hearing for years, but especially since Zach Wilson has been quarterback. Like, it's not all on Zach. It's everybody doing their job. We need to be better. It's embarrassing, like all the like there, but we haven't seen any evidence that they're gonna fix it yet. So there's a lot of angles to why the offense has been bad. I think the most alarming thing for me has been the beginning of the game. I think we've talked about this a little. Like the scripted plays are supposed to be like your best plays. You work on them all week. I don't think they've scored on the first drive this season. And Brian Costello from the Post, give him credit for this. So Bryce Hall in the very first play of the season, if you remember, had a 24-yard run, I believe. And then Aaron Rodgers gets hurt a few plays later. What would be your guess of how many rushing yards the Jets have had including that run that the Jets have had on the first drive this season?
He had 24 on that run.
24 on the first one.
44.
They had 25 rushing yards on the first drive this season.
And 24 of them were on that play.
Yes, well, they've had some negative rushes. So
right, but still, that's amazing. What I'm saying.
Yeah, and we're in week 10, so like that is alarming. And the fact that they're just not ready when they come out for these games on offense that's why they're in holes every week. They went to a 14-0 hole last week. A lot of that was the Garrett Wilson fumble and the punt return touchdown. But all of a sudden, they went from being able to come back from these games. All of a sudden, that feels insurmountable with the way this offense is. So, and it's just crazy. And I'm going on a sidetrack here, and we've talked about this stuff ad nauseum, but they literally have the worst red zone offense and worst third down offense in the league. It's not even close. It's like historically bad, like in terms of the Jets. So they should not even be 4-4, frankly, if you just look at the pure numbers, but the defense has been that good. So Hackett has a lot of pressure on him right now. I don't know if he has pressure in terms of job security. It seems like, Rodgers, as long as he's talking about coming back, Hackett's probably safe, but Hackett has not done his job, certainly. And I know a lot of people, there's like a weird contingent of like half like who want Zach out of here no matter what, and half that are like, it's not all Zach's fault. Stop blaming Zach for everything. I think the quarterback is the head of the snake, as Saleh has said in the past. And and as Salah said the other day, everybody's always trying to blame the offensive coordinator and quarterback. Well, yeah, they're the ones kind of running the show, and when it's this bad, it starts there. And if the quarterback was better and the OC was better, then the other stuff would probably be better too.
The quote that stood out from Salah this week to me was, "There's only so many things the quarterback has control over." He said that.
Yeah,
That's true, but the quarterback has control over more things than anyone else on the
yes.
field. So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
he doesn't
And
have
that's
everything, but he's the most important.
and that's the whole point. Like they can keep trying to like say, "Oh, we shoot ourselves in the foot." Oh, there's a lot of other reasons why things aren't. Yeah, but it starts with the quarterback being bad. He's the point guard. He's the all the cliches Robert Saleh uses. He's the head of the snake. If the quarterback is bad, everything around him is probably not going to be good either. If the quarterback is good and stuff around him is still going bad, then you can like question it. Like you look at like a Joe Burrow. He had the worst offensive line in the league when they went to the Super Bowl. Like good quarterbacks overcome it, and Zach Wilson is clearly not good. So. I don't know if Tim Boyle is good or Trevor Siemian either, but I'm sure we're going to get into the quarterback thing. But yeah, it's whatever they're doing is not working. I don't know if they've revamped anything in practice this week, but I know people in the building are not happy about the direction of the offense right now. So, yeah.
I mean, it'd be shocking if they were.
Exactly.
All right, let's make some predictions. These are your predictions, Zach. I'm not taking any credit for these. These are in your story. But I picked out 5 of the 10 that you have in the story. Again, check it out. There's some good stuff in there. Let's start with the one that surprised me the most when I read it. And it was your number 1 prediction, which was Zach Wilson will be benched. And you even added to that it'll either happen during this game against the Raiders or afterwards. That's pretty bold, just considering the messaging that they continue. It's not bold considering how Zach's played or what this team needs, but it is bold considering who's behind him and what Salah keeps saying.
Yeah, I think there's a part of it where I think Salah feels like he has to talk like that publicly because he has to support him, especially because Zach is still starting. So I certainly think it's possible that Zach goes out there on Sunday and plays well against the Raiders defense. That's not very good. It's definitely possible. We saw it happen. If you remember after the Patriots game, people were calling for him to be benched. And then he had the best game of his career against the Chiefs. They lost, and they've been kind of living off that Chiefs game since then. But like I'm not saying it. I'm not just ruling out the possibility that Zach turns it around this week. But based on all the recent evidence and based on what we know and what happened last year, it feels like we're exactly at the same spot as we were last year when they went to Mike White. I think going in that Patriots game before he got benched, I think there was some thought of the same thing. Like if he's as bad as he was the last time against the Patriots, we probably have to make a move. And then there was all the press conference stuff and all that. But I just don't think that if the Jets are bad against the Raiders, whether that's in the first half or for 4 quarters, again on offense, and Zach is bad, then I don't see any scenario where they can keep him in. If Robert Saleh wants to maintain this locker room, and I'm not saying it's a prediction. Like we have to make these predictions. I'm not saying like I 100% think this is going to happen, but my gut says that the Jets offense is not going to improve as much as we want them to. And if that's the case, then you change the quarterback. So I don't have a great again, and I've talked about this week. Like if they win 13-10 and Zach is bad, like do they still bench him? Like I kind of lean towards yes, but I don't know 100% no. I think they could probably justify keeping him in, but also at the same time, you have to look at you're about to go against the Bills and Dolphins, who are both very good teams, and those are important games. And narrowly beating the Raiders, losing to the Chargers with the worst pass defense in the NFL, barely beating the Giants, like you're not going to be able to do the same thing against those teams with a bad offense, especially the Dolphins, because I know the Jets defense can shut down anybody, but that's a really fast, explosive offense. That's going to be hard to contain for anybody. So my gut says that we're looking at a different quarterback next week. I don't say that with 100% confidence, but that's my prediction.
The Chargers loss, when you look at those 2 upcoming games, like really stands out even more, right? Because if they were 5-4, if they got to 6-4, and then even if you lose to the Dolphins and Bills, they're still 6-6. But now it feels like if they really want to stay in this playoff race, they have to beat one of those teams. They already beat Buffalo once, obviously.
Yeah.
That Dolphins offense, as good as the Jets defense is, knowing that you basically right now have to hold teams to under 14 points if you want a chance to win, it's hard to imagine them holding that Dolphins offense under 14 points. So, man, that's tough. All right, prediction number 2, Aaron Rodgers does not return. Debbie
Yes.
Downer here, Zach.
I think some of that has to do with this quarterback situation. So it's kind of like a classic Jet season where you're shuffling through all these run-of-the-mill guys. But if you bench Zach, you go to Tim Boyle. I like Tim Boyle. I think he's a good guy, and he did look good in the preseason, but there's not really evidence of him like being a starting NFL quarterback. So will he be the quarterback for more than a few weeks? Would they go to Trevor Siemian at some point? And you're bouncing through all these guys. And so if you get to the end of the season and they still only have 6 or 7 wins or whatever it is, and they're like mathematically in the playoffs, but it's going to be hard to make it. Like that's kind of where my head's going. I don't see why Rodgers would risk it. And even if the Jets are in legit playoff contention, I personally don't think it's worth the risk of Rodgers coming back too soon. Like I just don't see how it's possible that a doctor would clear him after 3 months after Achilles surgery. That just seems crazy to me. So, he's even like, I think he's tried to like couch it a little bit recently, especially on McAfee after the Derwin James stuff. You know, he said he still has a lot of stuff he has to do. And he keeps emphasizing that it needs to like, the games need to matter when he comes back. So, you know, what is like 2 games of Rodgers and then you're eliminated from playoffs? Is it worth like risking his career, risking your quarterback next year, for a chance to maybe sneak into the playoffs? Like, I just don't see it. I think Rodgers is smarter than that. I think the Jets know that if they put him out there and he gets hurt again, then some jobs are going to be lost. Like, I think that's the severity of it, especially if they like miss the playoffs on top of it. So I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's on the doctors, I guess, to a sense, but like,
yeah.
Whew, yeah.
Like, maybe there's something where if the doctors don't say they're comfortable with him playing, he signs a waiver or something like that. I don't know. That'd be a technical thing. I don't really understand. But again, I just don't see a doctor that in their right mind would clear a 39-year-old who just had Achilles surgery 3 months ago. As amazing as whatever he's done has been, he hasn't taken a hit or anything like that. So.
All right, let's get away from the quarterbacks. On the defensive side, and here's a positive one. Positive predictions. Bryce Huff or Jermaine Johnson will get 10 sacks, and the 2 of them are rolling right now.
I mean, maybe both of them, honestly. Yeah, that's the thing. So they both have so Bryce has 5 sacks, Germaine has 4.5. So they both project to right around 10 sacks for the season at that pace. But maybe more than that if you look at the recent pace. Like all of Bryce Huff's sacks have come in the last 4 games, I think. And I think 3.5 of Jermaine's have come in that stretch. They're getting after the quarterback. When the 2 of them are in there, it's like unstoppable off the edge. Because Germaine has like the strength and explosiveness. Bryce has the speed off the edge that has just like been impossible. They even threw in a very fun look where it was Bryce on the edge and Germaine was on the inside next to him, and it worked. So I think those 2 guys are absolute studs. And this goes back to the whole pay Bryce Huff thing. Like, his price is going up. I'm getting less confident they're going to be able to afford him at a certain point. Or if you franchise tag a guy like that, I don't know. It's like a really complicated thing. I know they've talked to him finally, Joe Douglas said, but yeah, I think they should be thankful that they have Bryce Huff and that Jermaine Johnson's becoming a star. And all of a sudden that 2022 draft class just keeps looking crazier and crazier with Germaine being as good as he is, on top of Bryce and Garrett being the only redeeming qualities of the offense. And Sauce Gardner obviously is probably going to make another Pro Bowl. So it's, yeah, I think those 2 guys, I legit think they might both get 10 sacks if they keep playing like they are right now.
Next prediction, back to the offense, back to kind of a negative one. Dalvin Cook will be released. And I think you put in Dalvin Cook will ask for his release and be granted it.
Yeah, so this kind of goes along with my skepticism that they'll be in contention at the end of the year. And if that's the case, I don't really know what purpose Dalvin Cook serves here. And he's not playing at all. He played like 6 snaps last week. As we get later in the season, you would think they would finally start giving Izzy Abanikanda a chance. So I just think it would make sense at that point. Like, you would have like a dead cap hit, but it doesn't really matter. Ultimately, it's on your cap sheet anyway, and it's the end of the season, and maybe you save a few $100,000 by cutting him. But ultimately, it's just about getting him out of the building, getting a young guy to play, letting Dalvin Cook go sign somewhere else if he wants to. He's behind Michael Carter, who has not been good either. Like, he's not playing at all. So at a certain point, I don't know what purpose he serves. I remain on the free Izzy Abanikanda family as everybody else is. He hasn't played a single game this year, which seems crazy considering they have no explosion on offense. Maybe that'll change this week. I don't know, but yeah, I would bring up Izzy, put down Dalvin, and eventually just mutually agree to part ways. Clearly, Dalvin's not happy here. He made that pretty clear before the deadline, and he's only played less since his comments. So,
one more prediction. Back to the positive notes. Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall will both get 1,000 yards. Is that 1,000 total yards or receiving and rushing?
No, receiving and rushing is where I went, which I should have dug into like when the last time the Jets had both at the same time was. Maybe it was that. I can't remember who the running back was in 2015 when they had that great offense. Maybe you can look it up. But yeah, they're both currently on pace for that. I think Garrett's numbers are going to get better as the season goes along. Personally, I think, especially if they change quarterbacks, and he's put up numbers with Zach Wilson. Breece is having a harder time. Chris Ivory, yeah. Did he have 1,000 yards that year though?
Checking that now.
Yeah. Yeah, Breece is having a harder time getting the yards lately, just because everybody knows he's running the ball. But I think as long as both those guys stay healthy, I don't see why they wouldn't get that. And if Garrett can keep increasing his workload, I think he has a chance at the Pro Bowl, but he needs to really pick up the pace because there's some great receivers in the AFC. So
2015 was Chris Ivory's lone 1,000 yard season in his career, and
they had him and Brandon Marshall that year,
and his only Pro Bowl. So there you go. That would have been last time.
Yeah. So the Jets might get both of them while having one of the worst offenses in the NFL, which is pretty remarkable. Because that year when they did that, they were like 11th in offense that year, which is
that was the last time they had a good offense.
Yeah, pretty much, and the only time in the last decade that they have. So,
all right, previewing the Raiders. It's an interesting game because obviously the Raiders were a dumpster fire for much of the season. Well documented. Josh McDaniels gets the team basically turns on him. He gets let go. Antonio Pierce given the interim tag. Then they go out last week. They get a big win. They score 30 points against the Giants. Against the Giants.
What's the Jets to not score that many points against the Giants? So.
Yeah. And then there's the video from the locker room of all the guys smoking cigars, the music blaring, and it's this whole new vibe there. I don't know if that's a good vibe or not, but it's better than losing and everyone being grumpy. So like here they come. But when you look at the roster, Aiden O'Connell's still the quarterback.
I mean, I will say the Jets were raving about him yesterday.
Well, of course.
Interestingly, though, like it sounds like they did a lot of work on him in the draft process. Like Jeff Ulbrich was saying that Todd Downing sat down with him like for multiple days, and they've used a lot of that information like in preparing for him. They talked about how smart he was, and I'm hearing all this. I'm like, I don't know, kind of sounds like it wouldn't have been the worst idea to draft him this year. They're not playing any of their other. They're not playing any of their other day 3 rookies. Like Zaire Barnes is active for the first time this last week, and I don't even know if he played. So, I forget what round McConnell was drafted. I think 4th round, or O'Connell. I think it was 4th round. And I guess they picked Carter Warren in that round. But the things that scare you about the Raiders is they have maybe the best running back wide receiver combo in the league, you could argue, with Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams. Devontae is an absolute technician. I'm sure Rodgers has chimed in a little bit this week, and Allen Lazard and guys like that know Devontae Adams and what he can do. Even like covering him, he usually finds a way open because he's like such a like amazing route runner. And then Josh Jacobs is just a strong, powerful runner that if you don't tackle him, if you don't tackle him with the right form, he's gonna break it. He hasn't had as great of a year. I think he started to pick it up. But I think they're making a concerted effort to feed him and Devontae the ball. So they just have had some issues against the run some games this year, some tackling issues early in games. They've given up some big plays, but you'd think they should be able to handle Aiden O'Connell if they can handle Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen and Justin Herbert and all that stuff. So I'm not as concerned about that. So obviously it's the other side of the ball. Raiders don't have a great defense, but they have Max Crosby. And ultimately that's like, I mean, I'm looking at their depth chart on the defense now. I haven't even frankly heard of some of these guys. They do have Marcus Peters, corner, who has a proclivity for pick sixes throughout his career, but their defense doesn't scare you, but neither has a few of the defenses Zach Wilson has faced, and it hasn't mattered. And Max Crosby can wreck a game. So it's, I'm curious to see what kind of game plan they have. You know, Antonio Pierce, the Raiders coach, Arizona alum, by the way, even though he worked at Arizona State, but he had some comments about like how the Jets kind of tell you that they're going to run the ball, which, like, I mean, it's we all can figure it out when it's going to happen, but
first down.
So I'm curious, like what kind of, I'm curious what kind of game plan the Raiders bring defensively if they try and blitz him and do it. I'm sure Wink Martindale's game plan is something that people are going to look at quite a bit. Throwing some exotic pressures and blitzes and stuff like that. And so I'm curious how the Raiders handle Zach Wilson and how he handles it coming at him.
And the Jets haven't handled elite defensive guys, right? Like Max Crosby.
Edge rushers in particular, yeah.
Parsons, and like it's been consistently like those guys who are great have great games against the Jets. That's been week in and week out this season. So that's another challenge for this line. It's interesting on the offense, looking into the numbers recently. O'Connell only threw for 209 yards last week. No touchdowns, no interceptions. They put up 30 points, but there was some defense. There was some different things. But, with the quarterback issues they've had, Devontae Adams is under 60 yards the last 5 games. So they're trying to get him the ball, but the Jets are trying to get Garrett the ball, right? Like it's harder to do than that. And then Jacobs on the ground similarly has had his struggles. I think he had 98 yards last week and 2 touchdowns, but it was hard work getting there against a good Giants.
I don't think their O-line is great either. So
right.
They're kind of a mess. It's kind of like crazy looking at the roster how bad of a job their GM did, frankly.
This is really going to be a telling. I said it last week, I think. It's a game the Jets should win. Can they go out and do it on a Monday night? But this is a game against a team that just isn't the Chargers
have Justin
was
Herbert,
a game we felt they could win, but the Chargers were in the playoff race, right? Like they're a team you look at and be like, they could get hot and make a run into the playoffs. The Raiders are not that. The Raiders are playing out the string, see if Antonio Pierce is the guy, like figure some things out and go into next year. So it's just a different animal, and a key test for the Jets. Because this is the one where if you don't win this one, just punt.
Yeah, I will say, did you see like all the stories coming out about the end of Josh McDaniels' tenure? Like some crazy stuff, like about how he had like an airing of the grievances meeting, and he had Antonio Pierce stand up and say something, and Pierce said something about how the Giants beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl and he played for them, and then Josh McDaniels pulled him aside. He's like, "Don't ever talk about the Patriots like that." Like he just like the quintessential Patriots hard ass wannabe Belichick guy. And I covered Joe Judge. Like it's just
same thing. Yeah,
it's just amazing these guys. And I can't imagine anyone from that tree is going to get a job outside of New England. Like maybe Jared Mayo replaces Belichick when he leaves. I don't know, but
that seems to be,
yeah. But I just, these guys every single time they do not know, like not
Vrabel is the only one.
Not even Patriots, not even just Patriots guys. Like in general, when coaches try and be a hard ass at a new location when they've accomplished nothing as a head coach or they didn't play in the NFL, like it's not going to work. It just won't. Like players don't want to be treated like they're in high school if you haven't earned the ability to yell at them like that. Like Belichick has earned the right to coach the way he does, and even that's not working anymore. And
but Belichick's not like he's not a hard ass in that way.
Well, and like in the way he like
rules,
he has
rules.
Well, these guys do that, and they're hard asses too. Like I covered Joe Judge. I once saw him after 30 minutes into a practice decided to start from the beginning because he didn't like the effort they were giving, which I had never seen before. He had guys running laps. He had them hitting each other like early in like the off season, which was like a real controversial thing because a guy got hurt doing it. Like
it's like high school.
Yeah. And the flip side is you have, a lot of training camps these days, like the Giants and Jets, who they don't even like hit each other really. So it's, I don't know. It's just the modern NFL coaches like that are just not going to work unless you're somebody who has earned the right to like talk to people like that, which is why the Urban Meyer thing was an absolute disaster. Cause he thought he was he thought he was hot shit when he got to the NFL and he was not hot shit. And the players did not respect him. And he was like, the stories about him with the Jaguars were crazy too.
That's an all-time great, The Athletic article.
Yeah, that was a great one.
Go back and check out.
For a while after it was like
that
article. Sometimes I'm sure you see this too on like Facebook and Instagram or whatever. Sometimes like stories will be advertised to us, and that one was always coming up like for a long time.
I think this was true for a while. I don't know if it's still the case, but there was for a long time that Urban Meyer article was the most read article in the history of The Athletic.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
There you go. Hopefully the Jets don't have a big enough disaster for that kind of stuff to happen, but I will write about it if they do.
You wrote enough last year at the end of the year on
seriously.
What kind of went awry. So, you know what? I didn't prep the picks here. Hold on.
I forgot my Thursday pick again. Brian Sternbeck just had an interesting thing. I haven't looked at this yet this season. The New York Times is a playoff predictor, which we are employed by the New York Times technically, so I guess I should know that. He estimates the Jets' chances of making the playoffs are at 20%. A win over the Raiders raises it to 24, and a loss only drops it to 19, which is pretty interesting.
Say those again.
Basically saying that if their chance to make the playoffs are at 20%. If they lose, it's only drops to 19. If they win, it jumps to 24. So like a loss doesn't,
I got you.
In terms of the predictor, doesn't like make a huge difference. Though I think that doesn't factor in the moral and like the emotional side of things.
Yeah, that's just the statistics
the
of it all and the math, and that it's not a division game, and they still have division games in front of them and all that stuff.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at the standings. These are the picks, weekly picks brought to you by BetMGM. We thank our partners for that. That's where we're getting the lines as well. Still a two-way race in front. New leader, though, new Nijmegen Jets was not in the lead last week, but ESS was. So it's still 2 in front with 71 total correct answers out of 120. That's a solid prediction, just under 60. And I think that's actually up. I think the leader last week was 57%. So trying to get over
if one of them break through, we'll have to have them on.
Yep. And then we scroll down a little bit. Zach forgets Thursday, so I'm not sure where he is.
You have a better percentage than I do. I'm a few.
See, that's the thing. I'm down here with 57, but I do have the good 53% because I forgot an entire week.
You might be up high in the standings if not for that mistake.
You're 59, just under 50%.
Yeah.
Based on my percentage, I'd be right around P makings here with 64, be 7 back. But anyway, good stuff. Let's look into this week's games. Last night I got right, Zach. I took Carolina plus 3.5, and they won by 3 in an awful game. It was
I think I would have picked that. I think I would have picked that too if I had done it because I think the Bears are. I mean, they won, I guess, so I can't really criticize them that much, but they're not very good either.
It was not a good football game.
Yeah,
man.
I was seeing a movie by myself. My girlfriend was out of town, so it was a good opportunity for me to go see the new Marvel movie that came out. So I saw that last night instead of watching.
Was it good?
Bad football.
Quick thumbs up, thumbs down.
It was like middle thumb, I would say, which is progress for recent MCU stuff.
So one interesting from that Carolina Chicago game, it was in the Pulse this morning, was Chicago has Carolina's pick.
Yeah. So they helped their first pick. Yeah.
There was extra value in the victory for the Bears because right now that could be the number 1 pick again. So the Bears had the number 1 pick, traded it away to Carolina, dropped back, got could have this year's number 1 pick. And Carolina ended up with Bryce Young, who there's reason for worry about Bryce Young.
Especially with how good CJ Stroud has been.
Yeah, so that's fascinating as far as that game goes and like the underlying draft stuff and where they stand. All right, let's go. Where do we want to dig in here? It's not as great a week as it was last week. San Francisco, Jacksonville. That's a really good game. I get the Niners minus 3.5.
So do I. Yeah. Actually, the Ravens Browns. I mean, maybe I should
another big one.
I should stop betting against the Ravens because they've just been dominating lately. But I think the Browns defense is good enough, and those games are always ugly. I feel like between those two, so I think plus 6.5 the Browns can hit.
That's probably the biggest game of the week if you take into account it's a division matchup.
Yeah, I mean, how about the line on you texted us about this last night?
Yeah,
I forgot to respond. But how about the line on the Cowboys Giants game? 17.5. That's the biggest I've seen in a long time.
I know, and I took the Giants because I just don't believe in that spread.
That spread's insane. I picked the Cowboys just because Tommy DeVito is playing quarterback. So.
No, I know. Well, and that's why the spread is that, right?
Yeah.
So he's the 10th rookie that will start a game this year.
It's a record for the NFL history, which is crazy. And this was viewed as not like a great quarterback class. I felt like, or at least not like after the initial guys.
Well, Tommy DeVito is not.
Yeah, he's not drafted either.
I mean, really, I guess. Well, so Stroud has looked great, obviously.
Richardson looked good before he got hurt.
Richardson looked good before he got hurt. Levis looked good.
Levis has looked good. Yeah, so it's a good quarterback class. Yeah. We'll see how Aiden O'Connell looks this week.
And the guy who went number 1 is, doesn't look
the
great.
worst. I mean, the guy, and then an undrafted rookie beat him last night in Tyson Bagent. So.
Oh yeah, and Bagent. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I mean, and the Jets line, it seems like has moved. They're a half a point underdogs. I feel like they were favored at first, weren't they? Maybe I made that
I
up.
only looked at this yesterday afternoon, and they were half
Okay.
point underdogs, but they may have been favored earlier
Yeah.
in the week.
So
when they
it's
first
pretty
came.
much a pick 'em at this point, or I guess if you factor in home field advantage, the Jets are favored. But
Yeah, I'm taking the Jets. I don't feel good about this
yeah.
game at all.
I mean, I guess I can say my prediction here. Like, I don't feel good about my prediction for this game, but what I've been saying is Jets 13, Raiders 10. Like I kind of alluded to. Like I feel like it's in like an ugly win where you're like, crap, do we make a change or not?
And I said 17-13, which isn't much different.
Yeah.
But I'll say this about 17-13. I think the only way they get to 17 is if the defense gets turnover deep. It basically gives them one touchdown.
Yeah.
Which we talked about on Tuesday, the fact that this defense now has this mindset
That
which they shouldn't need to have, that they have to score every week.
Yeah.
That may be the case that they
I guess let's see. Maybe they get a defensive touchdown, and that's the 13-10 win right there. It's a defensive touchdown and 2 Greg Zuerlein field goals.
If that's the case, you got to change the quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If the defense is your offense, you're in trouble. Somebody joked earlier
the defense outscores the offense.
Somebody joked earlier they should just punt it on first down, and if the defense is the offense, maybe that's the right move. I don't know.
The only problem with that is the guys need a break.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's great. They play 120 plays.
They need a 3 and out in order to get some oxygen on the sideline.
Yeah, like they play that's like a college game. I remember I covered an Arizona game where their quarterback threw like 70 times or something like that. But yeah, I think it's gonna be an ugly one. Maybe again, if they were gonna surprise me, this would be the week to do it because I don't think the Raiders are good and they're kind of like riding the high of last week. Some, they can kind of get put on their ass a little bit this week.
That does feel like last week was just that. Every time a coach,
I think if it was last week, if the Jets played the Raiders after they fired McDaniels, I 100% would have picked the Raiders. Teams firing a coach, it seems like almost every time the week after they fire him, they play their best game of the season. Then things kind of even out after that. Sometimes the Raiders went like 5-3 with Rich Bisaccia or whatever last time they fired Gruden. But they're getting them the week after that, which is like the come down. So I'm very curious in Taylor Decado, it was Anu Solomon who threw 70 times, not Khalil Tate, who barely threw it. That's an Arizona reference for only like the one person who knows what I'm talking about. But yeah, so that's what I got. I'm excited to go to the stadium, by the way. I'll give you guys my report on the stadium because it's the top of the list of the ones I haven't seen. I think I'll be in.
It looks like, along with SoFi, it looks like the coolest stadiums.
I think I'm in single digits for stadiums I haven't been to, just for shits and gigs. I want to see the ones that I haven't been to. Let's see. I haven't been to Cincinnati, Baltimore, Houston. I haven't technically covered a game at the Colts Stadium, though. I've been there for the Combine. I have not been to Vegas yet. I have not been to Detroit, Carolina, and San Francisco. So I think that's less than 10.
Carolina, Cincinnati, and Baltimore are very cookie cutter, boring.
Yeah, I know that. I could have went to the Carolina one when they were there for the preseason, but I had a wedding to go to, so that's probably the last.
And that one's going to get. They're putting a ton of money into it, or they're getting a new one, right? Carolina, I believe.
Are they? I didn't even realize that.
I think so. All right, I think that's going to do it. Do we miss anything?
I think we hit everything.
All right. We will see Sunday night under the lights again. Well, under the dome in Vegas, but near the lights of Las Vegas. Check out the Sphere when you're there. Zach.
Yeah, I was about to say. I think my hotel is right by it, so I'll be able to see it pretty well. I think.
Yeah, get some pictures up on social. That thing is awesome.
Maybe they'll have Chris Streveler showing up on it. Maybe he'll be like the photo.
I mentioned I was there for Summer League. It was a basketball that whole week. It was just this giant basketball like, that you could see from everywhere. It was really cool. So enjoy that and come back safe.
All right. Thanks.
All right. That's going to do it for the Can't Wait podcast. We'll talk to everybody early next week with a recap of this Raiders game. Can they get back on track again?